Hey, it's Mercury. Welcome to my reading vlog. I'm about an hour and a half in to my readathon. I'm on page 70 of like 400, and I'm reading Wuthering Heights. I have a problem with English literature, that I just find it extremely boring. And I can understand why other people like it, but it feels like one of those things that is supposed to be pretty easy to read, like light and airy, kind of like your typical like romance book or something along those lines. And it's not. It's, on the higher end of difficulty to read. And I just feel like I never get anything out of it that makes it worth it. It always just feels like bored housewives trying to do intellectual exercises, like pondering what empathy would feel like. And I don't get it. But every once in a while, I pick up a book and I try my hand. Maybe it needs to be an acquired taste for me, but it's just not hitting. This book is so incredibly boring. I am tired of hearing about Heathcliff's tragic upbringing. And once again, I am met with this really annoying lapse of expectations where I hear something about a piece of English literature and I'm like, oh my God, that sounds so interesting, so intellectually stimulating, blah, blah, blah. And it's just not, like, the writing just really lacks passion, which wouldn't even be a problem because I don't know. I don't like it. I want to keep reading. So maybe I'll change my mind. Hopefully I'll change my mind. So stay tuned. Hi, just a little update. I'm at page 86, chapter 9, and we just got past this scene where Catherine freaks out. Her and Heathcliff have like this fight because Heathcliff has, like, she has eclipsed Heathcliff in social standing and her studies, so they don't really have much to talk about, and he's kind of resigned himself to a life as a servant. And Catherine has become very socialized, and they just don't really have like that much to talk about anymore. And so they get into this whole argument because Heathcliff's like, you're not spending a lot of time with me. You're spending more time with the Lintons, which are their neighbors, and blah, 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 blah. And so they get into a whole spat. And then she like shakes a baby, slaps Edgar Linton, which is like her lover kind of person, and choose Ellen, who's the servant that is telling the story. None of these people seem like redeeming characters. Like, Heathcliff was giving emo zaddy vibes in the beginning of the book, but like, I don't really know, based on how he is in the beginning of the book, if he's actually a character that's going to be redeemed. Like, I don't really know anything about Wuthering Heights, so I have no idea how this is going to go. I understand that he like loves Catherine because they grew up together and they were both kind of like cast out. I just don't, like, I don't give a about Catherine. We established at the beginning of the book that she dies. And I'm like, yeah, good. You know, not if she was a real person, but as a fictional character, I'm like, no, she fucking sucks. She's a spoiled little fucking brat. I don't like her. Heathcliff is supposed to be like the main character of the book, and I'm just not feeling it. This guy lacks incredible substance. He's a very flat character. He just swings wildly between this resignation of his place in society from that to just being the most vile person that anyone could ever come across. And that's his entire personality. And it's like, I don't really see where this is going. And the whole book is about it, because I reread the blurb, and it's about Catherine and Heathcliff. And I was like, oh, maybe Catherine dies, and then Heathcliff as an adult finds new love or whatever that makes him less horrible. That's not what this book is about. So we're going to keep reading. In an attempt to find some redeeming qualities about this book, there is this one passage that I'm reading that is very good. Basically, Catherine has decided to marry Edgar Linton. And she's talking to Nellie about it, and she's like, but something like, just tell me that I'm right. Tell me that it was the right thing to do. And Nellie's like, no, I can't do that, bro. And so she says, what's the obstacle if you love him and he loves you and it's for the right reasons? Like, what's the obstacle? And she says, here and here, replied Catherine, striking one hand on her forehead and the other on her breast. In whichever place the soul lives, in my soul and in my heart, I'm convinced that I am wrong. That's very strange, and I cannot make it out. It's my secret, but if you will not mock me, I'll explain it. I can't do it distinctly, but I'll give you a feeling of how I feel. She seated herself by me again. Her countenance grew sadder and graver, and her clasped hands trembled. Nellie, do you ever dream queer dreams? She said suddenly, after some minutes' reflection. Yes, now and then, I answered. And so do I. I've dreamt in my life dreams that they have stayed with me ever after and changed my ideas. They've gone through and through me like wine through water and altered the color of my mind. And this is one, I'm going to tell it, but take care not to smile at any part of it. And I have to say that is like very poetic. Yeah, I feel that. I don't know. Still reading. Stay tuned. It's 11 p.m. I'm about 150 pages in. I'm throwing it up for the night. Yeah. No, I mean, I'll finish the book. But there is no character that has any redeeming qualities that I'm interested in, or have any redeeming qualities at all, for that matter. And I think that's the issue that I'm running into with this book. Heathcliff started visiting Catherine at Thrushcross Grange, and her sister-in-law, who's like 18, had a little crush on him. And so instead of being like a reasonable adult about it, she like sits her down in the parlor when Heathcliff comes in and just tells him that Isabella has a crush on him. And I'm like, Catherine, you bitch. Like, why? For what reason? Like, you're crazy. And sure enough, she is crazy. And Heathcliff also just sucks because he was previously just like ignoring Isabella. And now he's like all up in her shit, even though everyone told him to stay away from her because she's a child. She's like 18 in this book, but still. And he like makes out with her, like something like that. And so they all get into this whole argument. And then Edgar, like Mr. Linton, aka Catherine's husband, is like, okay, I've had enough of this. I don't give a fuck if Heathcliff is your friend, like get the fuck out of the house. He leaves, and then Catherine responds to this by like shutting herself up in her room and not eating for 3 days. And she's very much giving that she has like control over the situation because she did suffer from an illness and like a kind of delirium, but she's like threatening Mr. Linton, Edgar, by being like, I'm going to go back into delirium if you don't do what I say. So is she acting like she's crazy, or is she actually crazy? Like, she does have a history of the illness, but it sounds like she's just kind of like throwing it around to just like gain control over the situation. Anyway, I wanted to get to page 200 tonight, but I decided that that was a frivolous pursuit tonight. So that's it for now. See you tomorrow. Good morning. I have a few minutes before work, so I'm going to try to get some reading in. I am absolutely determined to finish this book today. Hi, friends. Just a little reading update. I'm about to get busy with work, so I'm probably not going to be able to read until the evening, but I'm up to page 164. This is probably the slowest that I've ever read in my entire life. I think I've read academic texts faster than I am reading this book. I'm at the part where Isabella takes residence in Wuthering Heights with Heathcliff. At this point, we've basically established that Hindley, who is Catherine's brother and the owner of Wuthering Heights after his dad passed, has lost Wuthering Heights to Heathcliff and is trying to get it back, but I think he's going to wind up like owing him more money or something along those lines. And Heathcliff and Isabella got married, and she like ran off with him to like elope. For what reason? What attracts you to Heathcliff? This doesn't make any sense to me. This subplot of Isabella allowing Heathcliff to use her to become the heir to the Thrushcross Grange estate does not make any sense to me, because it's like they haven't said 2 words to each other. She has a crush on him, and he's like, yo, let's get married. And then she's like, sure. Like, she's a fucking heiress. He is handsome enough, but also there are these undercurrents of racism in there. I'm just not getting it, guys. I'm not getting it. But we persevere. We persevere. And I just hope with all of my heart and soul that I don't finish this book and want to yeet it across the room like I did with Mrs. Dalloway. So, reading update. I'm on lunch right now, so I figured I'd get a little reading in. And I cannot stress enough that I really did not want to be a hater toward this book. There were a lot of people who were talking about how they were excited or not excited for the movie to come out, and it was their favorite book and all of this stuff. So I was very excited to read it because I wanted to be a part of the thing that everybody was excited about and loved. So I did not come into this wanting to be a hater. I just want to stress that enough. Now, with that being said, I do have to say that I get it. I get why people like it, because it's very much this dramatic love story. Like, you know, she would kill herself to be with him. There's a lot of pride involved. And I think that the writing of the romance between Catherine and Heathcliff specifically is really good. There are like these star-crossed lovers of different social circles or social classes, and they're just inseparable. It's like this soul tie. So like I get that part. And I think that part is really well written. I just reached the part in the book, like, I mean, this is a really old book, so spoilers, I guess. I've been doing it this entire time. the part in the book where Heathcliff comes to Catherine after she's been in fever, and they have this fight, and it's very, very passionate, very emotional. It's really good. The problem that I keep running into with this book, and I am so sorry that I am being incredibly redundant, is that I'll read a couple of pages and I'll be like, oh yeah, like, I like this. I like where this is going. And then I remember that they suck. That all of them suck. The only ones who kind of don't suck are Edgar and Elizabeth Linton. No, Edgar and Isabella Linton. I'm like halfway through this book and I don't even remember these people's names. And they also suck differently. Especially, and going back to Heathcliff and Catherine sucking, Heathcliff literally marries Isabella to become the heir to Thrushcross Grange. And she writes to Nellie saying like, hey, please come visit me in Wuthering Heights and blah, blah, blah. I'm regretful, but I have to stand by my decision. She goes to Wuthering Heights and Heathcliff is like, Isabella's just some were, you know, I made it my duty to get her to hate me as soon as possible, and it only took a day, and if I leave, then she's just gonna fall back in love with me again, and blah, 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 and this, that, and the other, and Isabella's like 18 years old and totally up about the whole thing. For what reason? Isabella did nothing. She did nothing, and I don't understand why I'm supposed to like this thing. I don't even have that like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia kind of vibe where it's like they're terrible people and so you like watching bad things happen to them. Like, one, that's like not my vibe, but two, it just pulls me out of the story so much because I'm like, oh, Edgar's being nice to Catherine, and then I'm like, for what reason? She's a piece of shit. And then it's like, oh, Heathcliff and Catherine finally get to meet again, and it's like, for what reason? They're both horrible people. I don't know. Maybe if they both die in like a Romeo and Juliet sort of thing, that will feel fulfilling. But at this point, because they're both characters that are horrible people with so little substance, I don't really think anything is going to reconcile this hole that I have. Reading about them being in love and being in pain and being in love and being in pain. I would much rather this story be about Isabella and Edgar and Nellie, who's like the only regular person in this entire book that has some kind of substance to her. And I think that if it was told with more of an insight into Heathcliff or Catherine's mind, to really flesh out the story and the motivations, I think that it would be done a lot better. Like, I don't necessarily understand why this book is written in third person. Because, like I said, both of the main characters are absolutely insufferable. And I feel like you could have very easily fixed that by it not being a book in third person. And I like books written in third person. I know that might be a hot take, but I typically like third person narration. But it being from Nellie's perspective, I feel like it loses a lot of the detail that a first person perspective or even a third person perspective with an omniscient narrator like Dostoevsky's books would offer. So yeah, I don't know. I'm still hating it, but the writing is good when she's not doing that weird hillbilly English accent written out thing. I kind of just skip over those parts because I can't even conceptualize it in my brain. So like I said, I came into this knowing nothing, so I don't know if anything happens that like kind of turns the whole thing on its head. I would look forward to that. I would relish in that, to be honest. Like, I want to like this book. I almost like this book. If there was 10% more, I would not enjoy reading this. So hopefully there are some twists or events that happen that make these characters more real, or there is a third character or a third main character introduced or something along those lines. I am hoping and praying that something changes in this book to make me understand. Like, I do understand the hype. I definitely understand the hype. I just think that this book is not for me. And my pet peeves and grievances when it comes to reading anything are just very much highlighted in this book and English literature in general. I need a fully fleshed out character. I really need a fully fleshed out character. So, I don't know. We keep on going. So, hey guys, so a little reading update. Catherine has died. I'm somewhere in part 2 now. Catherine has died. Heathcliff has just found out, and he's like really upset about it. And I really love this passage. The writing with grief and passion and loss is absolutely exquisite. And there are definitely a lot of redeeming qualities in this book, and I definitely understand why it's universally loved. So I'm really not trying to be a hater. I am trying to relish in these parts of the book that I can really lose myself in. This is definitely one of those passages. And I pray one prayer. I repeat it till my tongue stiffens. Catherine Earnshaw, you may not rest as long as I am living. You said I killed you. Haunt me then. The murdered do haunt their murderers. I believe. I know that ghosts have wandered on earth. Be with me always. Take any form. Drive me mad. Do not leave me in this abyss where I cannot find you. Oh God, it is unutterable. I cannot live without my life. I cannot live without my soul. So good. Hey guys, a little reading update. So the book has shifted to first like Isabella's trials and tribulations with Heathcliff, which I found pretty interesting, but I also wish that Isabella was a more fleshed out character. And then we move after Catherine's death to Kathy, who is Catherine's daughter that Ellen and Mr. Linton, aka Edgar, are raising in her absence because she's dead. And this is actually a little bit more interesting because you can see how the past is coming back to haunt the present as far as like generational trauma is concerned. So I think this second half, like a little farther than second half of the book, I'm taking more of a liking to. I'm finding it more interesting, easier to read and kind of connect with. So we'll see how it goes. I do not vehemently despise this book like I did earlier. So that is exciting. I don't like not liking things. And like I said, I still get it. I still understand why people love it, even if it didn't change perspectives or change which characters it focused on. So once again, gonna keep reading. I'm pretty like indifferent toward it at this point. Like I said, I am enjoying it now, but I am kind of like just barely enjoying it now. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah. Hello, friends. I'm currently at the gym because between work and reading, I am starting to feel like an apparition. So we're gonna work out. We're gonna take a nice shower, eat some dinner, and then we will be back to reading. Hello again. My body is nourished in both movement and with food. I am feeling slightly like a real person again, and I am not liking it. So it is 6:45. I have my cup of tea. I have my trusty companion Chappie, and I will be finishing the rest of this book. I have about 150 pages left. If my reading pace is any indicator, I will hopefully be finished by 10:30, 11 p.m. I will have to call it a night at around 11 because I have to be up bright and early to be in the office tomorrow. So Let's get started. Hey, so reading update. I'm on page 260 and the book has gone back to being boring. I regret to inform you all. Basically, any part that doesn't involve Heathcliff, I seem to enjoy. And he is meddling now, again, and I'm annoyed again. I really like Mr. Linton, Edgar's daughter, Kathy. She has a really uplifting spirit and she's very innocent. And then it occurred to me that Kathy is actually the very sour, bitchy girl who was introduced in the beginning of the book, which once again, like, dashed my hopes and dreams because it's like, I liked Kathy. And now she is, but now I know her to be stuck at Wuthering Heights with Heathcliff. And it's like this man just like destroys everything he touches. And it's like, for what reason? Like, for what reason? Anyway, there's also this part where Edgar's sister's kid comes to live with him. Now, Isabella was married to Heathcliff, and so the kid, Linton, is Heathcliff's son. So Heathcliff finds out, scoops up Linton, and now Linton, and then he's facilitated this meeting between little Linton and Kathy, and they are cousins, and I guess incest be damned or whatever. So now him and Kathy have a thing, and if Linton marries Kathy, then the estate becomes Heathcliff's in the event that Linton dies. And so Heathcliff is basically hoping that he marries Kathy to get ownership of the Thrushcross Grange estate in the event that Linton dies. And he's kind of hoping for Linton's death because he thinks that Linton is delicate, of ill constitution. I don't know. So I'm back to being annoyed. I like when the book is happy. And listen, I can read sad books. I can read books that rip your heart out and all of that stuff. It's just that with this book, the bad stuff that's happening is all because of this guy who just sucks. And everyone's trying to live their lives, and he's just this black hole that sucks everything in. And him being the only non-white character that feels also racist and annoying. I feel like there are so many themes of this book that you can take in like a really weird way. Don't show compassion to strangers because Heathcliff's adoptive father took him up off of the street. And so it's like, oh, whatever. There's just, I am angry. That's okay. It's just a book, dude. It's just a book. However, with that being said, I am still enjoying it more without Catherine being there. Her daughter does bring a brightness to the book that I think is needed. And although I do still find her character to be shallow, I am kind of used to the shallow characters at this point. So it is not as annoying when you have a shallow character who's sweet and innocent as it is to have a shallow character who is gross and evil. So, because I feel like being gross and evil requires more motivation than to be naive and innocent. So, with the introduction of Kathy, the book has definitely picked up for me a little bit, but I also am seeing her decline into this just bitter and resigned mindset because of Heathcliff's meddling in her life. And that's very disappointing. It like gives me a little bit of an ache in my heart to know that. So 80 pages left? No. 70, like yeah, like 80 pages left. So I can't really imagine how it ends because the story starts with Heathcliff Harrington, Hindley's son, and Kathy in Wuthering Heights. So I don't really know where the story is going to go from there. I mean, obviously, we find out that Linton dies because he mentioned in the beginning of the book that his son is dead. So I don't, does it just like circle back and end? I just can't, once again, I just can't imagine that I'm going to have a satisfying ending to this book that's going to make it feel worth it. And I'm kind of back down to not enjoying it because I'm kind of having this dread now that Heathcliff is just literally just ruins everything. So now that we've established that he just does that for the sake of doing that because he's an incredibly selfish person. So I'm going to keep reading. Done. And for what? Honestly, that was more of a psychological horror book than anything else. Jesus Christ. Yes, Heathcliff dies at the end. No, I did not care. I felt no fulfillment, no satisfaction, no levity. And like, listen, I can read a f***ed up book. I swear I can. But I just have to care about the characters. Like, there's this line that's like, oh, him and Catherine are walking the moors as ghosts. And I'm like, I don't care. They sucked. I'm happy that Catherine and Harrington are like cool now. Jesus. Yeah, final thoughts once I marinate on this a little bit, but that whole thing of that whole thing with Heathcliff and Linton and Catherine and forcing her into his home and shutting her up there until him and Linton or her and Linton were married. Like, that was crazy. That's like soap opera. And you know what? Maybe that's why people enjoy it. I can understand that it's the drama of it all. 100% get it. No, I don't think I get it. I really don't get it. And I don't disparage people for liking it. And let me just say that straight up. If you read Wuthering Heights and it was your favorite book of all time, genuinely, unequivocally, love that for you. But I would also like you to explain it to me because I do not understand. I feel like there are so many other books that depict love and drama and all of these things in classic literature that are hefty books to read or very intellectually stimulating or can be seen as difficult reads or something along those lines that really solidifies it. There are even other types of classic literature or classic English literature that I feel like fits this bill better than this book. And are we even going to talk about the racism? That's probably for not 10 p.m., which is late for me. I'm going to bed, and I would like to erase this book from my memory. Hi, it's Mercury, and I'm here with my final thoughts on Wuthering Heights and my reading experience. So I know that I spent a lot of time in my reading vlogs on this book, left, right, and center. I do think that I was a little harsh, but I do still think that the book was quite the roller coaster. So I wrote down some of my likes, some of my dislikes, and ultimately my final thoughts on the book. So some of my likes about the book were when the writing was about love and about passion and about loss. I really liked the way that Emily Bronte visualized that for us in her characters. So when Heathcliff is doing this soliloquy about how much Catherine means to him and how painful it was to lose her, that really caught me. That really raptured me. I also really liked the themes of revenge, passion, the way that emotions can just overcome people. And I also liked Nellie and Kathy's character. So in my last vlog, or one of the last ones, I refer to Kathy as Catherine, but it's Kathy. I'm referring to Kathy, the daughter. I really liked Kathy's character, and I really liked Nellie's character as well. Some of my dislikes, and I will keep it brief since you had to hear about my dislikes the entire video, is I hated Heathcliff and I hated Catherine. I thought they were sympathetic characters in the beginning of the book, but as the book went on, it just felt like there was so much harping on the past, and I didn't feel like their motivations should have continued to motivate them up until that point. I also felt like there wasn't enough inner conflict within those characters. We don't see a lot of inner conflict. We see a lot of reacting to external conflict. And this is where I think an omniscient narrator or first person perspective would have really benefited the book. It's also possible that I just don't really like Victorian prose. I think that Victorian prose might be a little bit too rigid for me to read. TBD on that. I don't really know yet. I haven't read a ton of Victorian prose, so we'll circle back to that. I also think that the passion and the instability of both Heathcliff and Catherine overshadow that well fleshed out, well developed essence that people like to point out in those characters. So that's also another thing that I think really takes it down a notch for me. There are plenty of other books as I started to talk about in my last vlog, but I think I was like a little delirious at that point. There are a lot of other books that are able to do this passion and this instability while also showing the character as a three-dimensional person by introducing the inner conflict of maybe they don't want to be this way sometimes. Maybe they struggle with discipline, or they struggle to figure out what it is they really want out of life. Also, we have to talk about the racism. Heathcliff is very much not white. In the book, they say something like his mother could have been from China and his father could have been from India. Like, dude is not white. And even the sympathetic characters in the book, such as Edgar, exhibit racism toward Heathcliff. Now, I am by no means saying that you should not enjoy this book because there is racism in it. I think that Emily Bronte also combats what she can comprehend of that racism by Catherine, quote, like not seeing color, and Earnshaw taking in Heathcliff in the first place. But that could also be seen as like white savior complex. I think the biggest issue is painting this non-white character as the big bad villain. That's my biggest issue with Heathcliff not being white and the villain in this book as far as racism goes. And that is definitely an undertone. Did Emily Bronte mean to do that? Only the historians know, I suppose. But I think that she kind of used his exotic nature due to the fact that he is not white as a tool to craft this insidious character whose motivations we don't always know, who's very sneaky and very sly, and very opaque in his motivations. So that's just my thoughts. But like I said, I don't think that it should deter you from liking it if you already like it, but it might be a deterrent to reading it. I think that you are not missing much in the literary world or the classic literature world by not reading this book, because you can get what this book gives in other books that don't have the same characteristics that I despise in the book. However, with all of that being said, I do recommend this book, and I recommend this book to a very specific kind of reader. I recommend this book to readers who like contemporary romances and dramas, and I recommend this book to people who already know that they do enjoy classic English literature, specifically like the Gothic style, from the perspective of Englishmen. I originally rage rated this book as a 3 out of 10, but I'm going to say that it's a 5 out of 10. The reason I'm going to say it's a 5 out of 10 is because ultimately the writing is fantastic. I do understand that for the time period, that historical empathy that we talk about, that for the time period, this was very controversial, and it was very groundbreaking. So those are two things that I take into account when I am reading my books. The other thing that makes it a 5 out of 10 was, although that this was an emotional roller coaster, there were parts of the book that I genuinely enjoyed. I genuinely enjoyed Nellie narrating the book. I genuinely enjoyed Kathy. I genuinely enjoyed the fact that this wasn't a true Shakespearean tragedy. So the people who lived and the people who died, I do think should have lived and should have died in the ways that they did. So I do feel like a sense of righteous justice after reading this book. Nothing was so betraying or traitorous that it made me feel cheated as the reader. There's also just a possibility that I might not be a fan of the Bronte sisters in general. I did not like Jane Eyre. I thought Jane Eyre was ridiculous. Now, granted, I did read that in high school, so I will be eventually giving it another try. But there are other English authors of the time period, of the general time period, that I do love, like Mary Shelley. So I don't really know what it is. There's just something about this kind of book from an English writer's perspective specifically that makes me angry. And I look forward to continuing to investigate that and prove it wrong. Ultimately, my feelings about the book are actually a lot more positive than I expected them to be. So we are making progress, and I don't want to be a part of the hate train. I wouldn't recommend reading it if you are first starting out in your classic literature journey. This was a very difficult book to read, even for me. And if I do say so myself, I would call myself a very competent reader. And if you struggle with historical empathy when it comes to reading older books, I think this book will be a struggle to relate to the characters. That I am 100% certain of. So I would not recommend this book if you are looking to dip your toe into classic literature. Maybe later on. I think it's a very advanced book due to its age, and the circumstances that the characters are in are very lending to the time. So that is my final review. Thank you so much for tagging along on my reading journey of Wuthering Heights, and I hope you'll stick around for the next one.